April morn, here we stand at dawn, gathered for the nation's requiem.
My name's Mark Cryle. My Anzac Fellowship research is about the archivists of loss, particularly those people who were custodians of the letters that soldiers sent back, and the way that these records tell us a particular story, an intimate story about the way memorialisation took place after the war within families. I think it's difficult to read the letters that have been written home by soldiers, and on occasions the letters that have been written to them, without being inspired in some way by those words, by the experience that those people went through. And my particular interest is in the experience on the home front of all the collateral damage that came from the war. There's a lot of talk about the tragedy that the soldiers went through, and that's quite valid. But we need to think too about the poor families, the loved ones who sort of had to push on in the wake of death or maiming of some kind, a mutilation, be that psychological or physical. But it's an interesting point you make about the way people remember. And by way of an aside to the work I'm doing, another way that people grieved and went through that process was many of them in the period, in the late part of the war and the subsequent years, went into spiritualism, looking for a way to connect with their dead loved ones. And there are quite famous people who are involved in that process, not least of all Arthur Conan Doyle, who was the writer of Sherlock Holmes. And that's happening in Australia too. People are trying to connect with the spirits of their loved ones. And it's all part of an attempt to stay connected to the memory of someone, I think. People write to the bereaved who mightn't even know them just because they feel they share that process. So a grieving mother might write to another grieving mother that says, my son died, at the same time, and they build up a kind of network of people. Very often the soldiers who were there, who may have witnessed the death, would have written, and typically they would have said, he died quickly and painlessly and died like a hero. Well, we know that that's probably not necessarily true, but that's what they felt they had to say. Officers would write in, military chaplains would write in, and they build up, one of the historians talks about this notion of fictive kin, that you develop a broader network of kinship around this memorialisation. So very often these collections of letters don't just contain letters from the soldiers themselves, but they contain a range of other letters of people saying, I remembered him, he was a wonderful man, etc., etc. He will be sadly missed.
So take your post, but best not look too close. Raise a shroud upon the masquerade.
Well, one of the things that struck me about Anzac Day and that public memorialisation is a question I asked myself was, how much did that help a grieving loved one, and how much did it help, the bereaved, that process? So that idea inspired a song that I wrote called Anzac Parade, and in that song what I try to do is differentiate between the public rhetoric and the private feelings, and try and talk about the things that what we hear, the language of Anzac Day, what someone's called the high diction of it, doesn't necessarily tap into the very personal feelings of those who've been traumatised by the war experience.